So hello everyone, my name is Raffaello Pantucci. I'm Director of International Security Studies here at the Royal United Services Institute. And I'm here today to talk with my colleague Kamal, who is a visiting fellow from Pakistan, about the Pakistani elections, which have just sort of concluded. The sort of polls are out at the moment, and at the moment it looks like we're looking at Imran Khan winning the elections. So what we wanted to do was to try to talk through the consequences of the election, understand a little bit what's happening on the ground, and understand a little bit about what this means for Pakistan going forwards. So maybe, I think to get us started, Kamal, the conclusion of Imran Khan looking like he's been the victor is not entirely surprising, but talk us through sort of how we got to this situation and how the election campaign sort of played out.
So Imran Khan's now been in politics for 22 years, although he's not a career politician, but he's been always going on about the counter-corruption drive in Pakistan. He's always been ridiculed as being as the Donald Trump of Pakistan, populist. He had a massive fan following as a cricketer, of course, and in his first 10 years he struggled in politics in the late 90s and the early 2000s. However, 5 years ago his party won in the Northwest Frontier province, and he's done remarkably well there. His party have clamped down on corruption, the police force, the education, the healthcare system, and that's what he kind of used to push against the two established parties, the PPP and the PMLN. And in fact, in that sense, it's a very significant election result, although still early, but it looks like he will get enough seats to form a government without a coalition, because for the last 4 decades, Pakistan has been dominated by two political families. You had the Sharif family and the Bhutto, and the third family, Zardari, muscled its way in, again through marriage with the Bhuttos. So it's been very much feudal. It's almost all the politicians of Pakistan are on the rich list of corruption who's who. So, and that is why Imran was able to galvanize the people. The election campaign was run on that. Of course, there are allegations already coming in that perhaps there was favoring done to him. But in the Pakistani sense, those allegations are normal. 5 years ago was Imran alleging the Sharifs were supported by the military. This time it's the other way around. And of course the military remains dominant. But civil society has grown. This is only the second time in history a democratically elected parliament has finished its term. So now it's been more than a decade where there has been no direct military rule. So in that sense it's significant. Imran is not a career politician. He's making the right noises. He's galvanized the youth of the country, which were never involved in politics before, and the middle classes, which again were not involved, because politics was seen very much as either a family thing or the feudals who used to get votes just by buying their votes. So in that sense it's significance, and Imran is looking to go forward. For the Sharif family and the Bhutto family, it's a considerable blow, because as I said, no one could even dream of a day where this would happen. But Imran has pulled it off, and he's got enough people with him who are not in his party. He has an alliance with the Islamist parties, because in the Northwest Frontier, of course, it's the area of the country most affected by the war on terror. And he has been credited with fixing the system in terms of not just bureaucracy, but also the IDPs, more than 2 million internal refugees that the war had created because of what was happening in Afghanistan. And that's why he gets support from the Pashtuns. The Pashtuns have supported him for the last 6 years now. He also has enough support in the big cities of Punjab, which is the biggest province with 100 million people almost in Punjab. And as far as foreign policy goes, he's made his first press conference today, saying that he wants to emulate the Chinese model, and that really is the way it sets the tone for the immediate future of Pakistan. Although not a surprise that China is the biggest player in even domestic Pakistani politics, China being the biggest investor, but also having a very strong military relationship with Pakistan, whether it's with ballistic missiles or nuclear technology. So I think that sets the tone, where he's made it clear China remains a strategic partner for him to work with. He says he wants a balanced relationship with the US. Imran has always accused America of using Pakistan in the war on terror. And in that sense, I don't quite think Imran will pander to the generals, as people are saying. He's his own man. He's always been critical of President Musharraf involvement in America's war, as he calls it. So I think we will see, for the first time, a civilian who will try to impose himself. How that works, we don't know yet because it's very early, but he certainly knows the international arena very well. He's well linked with a lot of powerful governments in the West, purely because of his days at Oxford or playing cricket. So I think that's the thing. China is going to be the key partner, as he says it.
Mm-hmm. And can I ask, so what about these, I mean, you touched a little bit upon this, but the question of the role of the military in his victory. I think there was a lot of accusations that, they were actively favouring him. I wonder if you could tell us a little about why you think the military was being perceived as favouring him and whether you think they actually were.
I think that the allegations are there, and the military, of course, as everyone knows, it's ruled the country for half its span. They are influential. Pakistan is still in a state of war, so the army obviously has a big say. I think some of the claims are exaggerated because today even the EU observers have said that so far it seems to be a clean election. In terms of favouring, yes, the army has always had favourites, and it's ironic because Nawaz Sharif owes his whole political career to the army. He was brought in by General Zia al-Haq, so he's the last person to complain because he was a beneficiary of military favoritism. So I think that is a fact of life in Pakistani politics. But Imran, in his defence, has genuine support from all parts of the country. But the army definitely has stood behind him. But that's not to say that the others have not benefited. It's been an equal footing, historically speaking, but perhaps this time it's helped him more.
I mean, I think the China element that you mentioned is a very interesting one, because I think that, the China-Pakistan economic corridor is the big economic story in Pakistan at the moment. This is the kind of key that I think a lot of politicians are seeing as the big change factor in the country, and I think a lot outside as well can see there's a great potential opportunity here in development for the country. I think what's interesting to me is the degree to which there is a sort of unanimity on CPEC, or the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, as a positive thing for the country across the political spectrum. But I think what's also been striking is in my last visits to Islamabad, the degree to which you do see a kind of pushback starting to take place. And I think it's interesting in the point that you made about Imran Khan's first speeches being very specifically talking about China and how he wants to work with China. I do think there has to be some sort of a reaction, however, if he's going to be able to continue forwards on this populist platform, to show some sort of a reaction to the China-Pakistan economic corridor. And I wonder how you think that might articulate itself. Is it going to show up in maybe a greater willingness to confront some of the corruption allegations that we've seen around some deals? I know in the run-up to the election there was a certain discussion around the Lahore Orange Metro line and the fact that this potentially was a deal that had maybe had some corrupt elements to it. And, that will have a kind of knock-on effect to the Chinese and their investments in the country and some of their companies who are there. So I wonder how you see the kind of CPEC getting impacted by the election, the campaigning, and then ultimately by Imran Khan. If we take as a given that he's probably going to connect with CPEC because it's the big economic investment that Pakistan needs. But what do you think, how do you think it actually will play out in kind of practice? Will there be any changes, and how might they play out?
Well, yes, over the last year, China has also shown signs of frustration, and just a few months ago we had senior Chinese officials and academics in Islamabad saying CPEC is not a gift and it's not a given. And I think there has been an overwhelming feeling in Pakistan thinking this is a freebie and China's here to bail them out. And it's not really a bailout. It has to be, someone has to take up their end of the bargain, being Pakistan. And there have been allegations not just against Nawaz Sharif's party but also Zardari's party of corruption, that there's a lot of siphoning off money, and there's a history to it. It happened in the 1990s as well. And in that, Imran sees an opportunity to get Pakistan's own house in order, because at the moment Pakistan's own house is not in order. There's massive corruption, they're on the verge of an economic collapse and bailouts. There was even talk of getting a new IMF loan to finance CPEC projects, which again raises concerns for China. In that, he does have the military support, because the Chinese-Pakistan relationship started off as a military relationship in the 50s, with the first Pakistani military ruler, General Ayub Khan. So I think in that sense, Imran knows that working with China needs a new element. Pakistan has to show progression. Because I think at the moment it's been an old Chinese show, and a lot of people are asking questions, what are the benefits of Pakistan at the moment? And again, one can only blame the Pakistani government for this, because China have kept their end of the bargain. And you see this in international affairs as well. Same with Iran. The Iran-Pakistan pipeline was signed in 2008, and the Iranians did their end of the bargain 2 years ago. The Pakistanis haven't taken it up. Again, there the military has taken the lead. The army chief travelled to Iran for the first time in 30 years. The Pak army chief went there on a bilateral visit, and the Iranians have visited. So there is a sense that there has been a massive failure. Pakistan have not had a foreign minister for 4 years. That's another allegation against Nawaz Sharif, that he was not interested. He's primarily a businessman. All he was talking about is personal enrichment rather than the states. In that sense, Imran is talking about we have to set the record straight, otherwise China, which of course is supposed to be an all-weather friend, but their patience could run out.
I wonder if we could talk a little bit about the security situation, which, I think during the election period, I think observers thought that the violence wasn't maybe to the scale that it could have been. I mean, we saw some pretty horrendous attacks. In fact, the most recent one was, a day or so ago in Quetta, which killed, I can't remember if it was 30 or 50 people, but, we've seen some pretty substantial attacks take place, but it wasn't maybe the level of violence that people were expecting. And I suppose the thing is, this is part of a bigger trend, I think, that's been visible in Pakistan, where violence has been going down to some degree. How much do you think that trajectory is going to continue? And how much do you think the election and its result will affect it, one way or the other?
Yes, 3 years ago, Pakistan was averaging almost 3-4 bombs a day. It's now dropped to 3-4 a month, ever since the launch and culmination of Operations Zarbiaz. So the security situation has vastly improved, and the army have been working very closely. Again, because Imran's own province, the Northwest, was the one dealing with the brunt of the military operations, he has had a working relationship with the army, rather his party have. And I think Pakistan, in terms of internal security, is heading in the right direction. Karachi is much safer now. Karachi was riddled with 2 decades of mafia-like political parties and criminal gangs, as well as religious parties, and we had loads of terrorists based there. And that is on the down, and I think it needs to continue because, of course, although things have been stabilized, they're not quite out of jail yet. There is this talk of alleged ISIS in coming in from Afghanistan. The last 3 bombs in Pakistan have all been claimed by ISIS Khorasan. So there is that threat is still looming. But insofar as the army's operations are concerned, they now think it's the civilian government that need to step up. And another remarkable fact is, for the first time in Pakistan's history, Fatah will be no more. So the tribal areas, which are a legacy of British military rule in the Northwest, are coming to an end. So they will be integrated into the Northwest, which is again Imran's own plan. So that would be a very positive sign in terms of how the security situation works. They still have to be very careful. They could slip back into violence. All the indicators are there. You still have a lot of right-wing parties.
So what do you think Imran is going to have to do to make sure that he is able to deliver on the security brief of the country domestically?
I think, again, how he manages his relationship with the military. Over the last decade, the 2 previous governments of PPP and PMLN, they did not have a very good working relationship with the army, and that led to civil-military strife. And in that sense, the army does not want to be a police force. In the whole Clear, Hold and Build program, the army wants to transfer responsibility to the civilian government. And in that, Imran needs to step up and take responsibility for that from Islamabad. He's already done it from Peshawar, where the local KP government and the local KP police has done a tremendous job in terms of taking over from the army in Peshawar and in other places like Mardan, Kohat, Banu. So that's his main challenge. Also how he deals with the Afghan government, because of course there is an ongoing dialogue with Afghanistan. And again, it's not new. Every military chief, every new prime minister in Pakistan reaches out to Afghanistan and vice versa, but it always falls through. The Americans themselves are now negotiating directly with the Taliban, but even that has happened before. We saw that in Doha with the office of the Taliban in Qatar. So I think all those things are still a big question mark. He has to deal with the Afghan government. He has to deal with the Americans, because Afghan and Pakistan security are interlinked, because whatever happens on the other side of the border affects here and vice versa.
And let's turn to the other big foreign policy question, of course, in Pakistan, which is India. What is your sense of how Imran will be able to move the India-Pakistan relationship forwards? Is he going to be able to sort of push a line of engagement? Is he going to be interested in doing that? Or is he going to, continue to let things be sort of difficult as they have historically?
So Imran personally has very strong links with Indian civil society and leadership. We've already had all the top Indian cricketers tweeting in his support. But on to more serious things, again, that's an agenda the army sets. And here at RUSI, we've had Pakistan Army Chief of Staff General Bajwa saying Pakistan Army is ready to talk to India, and the generals have publicly even invited India to join CPEC. So from the Pakistani side, there is a willingness to talk to India, and in that, Imran will have the blessings of the military. And Imran himself, who, as I said, is no stranger to India, he's a common face there. I think there will be a very strong effort to talk to India, because obviously mending ties is the next step. First step is talking. There's been no dialogue for, I think, more than 2-3 years. The last proper dialogue was when Musharraf went to Agra. So I think he's very keen on talking to India. The onus is on Modi to come back to him on that, because the perception is that Pakistan is ready to talk whilst India isn't. Of course, the two armies are still firing at each other. The line of control has been the hottest it's been for the last decade. Soldiers losing almost every week, not just in Kashmir but also in Punjab and the working boundary. So I think the Indian relationship is very important, because that links to Afghanistan. Because the Pakistani allegation is that India is meddling in Balochistan, India is meddling in Afghanistan, and we had Modi even mention that in his speech of Balochistan. So there are some sensitive points, and I think that will be a very key talking point. And he said today in his after China, he mentioned India. He said he wants good relations with the neighbours.
So I think the final point, which I think would be interesting to talk about, will be to touch upon the UK relationship. How is a new Imran Khan government going to engage with the United Kingdom? Do you see that relationship changing in some material way? What do you think he's going to bring to the UK-Pakistan relationship?
So the UK-Pakistan relationship bilaterally is very strong, but it's always seen as being too military and security heavy. The two armies are very close because of the history and what's happening now. The security services are close. But there's the main thing Imran has been talking about, that we don't need British aid, we need trade. So as it stands now, bilateral trade between the UK and Pakistan is very minimal. He will focus on that. Of course, he spent half his life playing cricket here. He's also a contemporary of Theresa May from Oxford. So he has personal links with a lot of establishment figures especially in the Conservative Party, which are at the moment in power. So he will look to build on those. We've had a lot of prominent MPs already tweet in support of him, including his former brother-in-law, Zach Goldsmith. So, he will set Britain at the top. And I think Britain has a big chance here also to use the Pakistan-UK relationship to mend the Pakistan-US relationship. The UK has played a leading role before, although that was military-led. Perhaps with Imran coming into power, this might change the balance into the civilian side, where Imran can lead rather than the generals when it comes to the British relationship.
So thank you very much for that, Kamal. I think that was really fascinating. I think, looking at the Pakistani elections and how we see these consequences play out is going to be a really important set of questions that's going to impact the entire region. I think, as we've discussed on India, on China, on Afghanistan, how the Pakistani relationship with all these places plays out is going to have huge consequences for the future, for this region. I think we all wish the new government in Pakistan well, and we very much encourage you to continue to come to look at RUSI for work on South Asia and Pakistan in particular. Thank you very much.